Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shieldfeld channel. It's 2024. Hard to believe, but this is our first uploaded, whether you want to call it production, whether you want to call it real, whatever you want to call it, but it's our first podcast / video back from the break. Hopefully you all had a great New Year's and a Merry Christmas. And I am enjoying today, I'm moving mayhem by my co-host, Chase, Morgan Hewlett. Chase, how are you doing today?
Great. It has been a great new year, even though we're only 4 days into the year, but so far it's going good.
And with 2024, it brings more opportunities for films. So let's jump a little bit right into, well, actually, refrain that, because I know there's some films that we saw towards the end of 2023, one that I want to talk about, a few that you want to talk about. But how I think the episode is going to go for the audience listening is we are going to do our best to stay on topic and talk about some of the films that we saw in December, and then cut to maybe a little preview of what's to come in 2024 and jump back to Donnie's 2023 awards show mashup of everything that I've seen. Disclaimer, didn't watch a lot of Marvel stuff, so when it comes to the worst of 2023, you might not see Marvel stuff on there, only because we all know it was trash, but I didn't see it, so I cannot give it a proper rating. So therefore, Chase, let's jump into it. Chase, I know that you had some films in December that you went to go see in theaters. You want to tell the audience what some of them were?
So I saw 4 movies in December. Actually, I guess I saw one in January on New Year's Day. But anyway, so I saw 4 total. I saw Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Ridley Scott. And it was good, but there was a lot in the film that I didn't think needed to be there. It really focused on him and his wife more than what I thought it would focus on. And I noticed that right away, and I thought, okay, I can live with it. But then I heard it was a little not accurate to what history actually told. So I'm not sure on the film. I gave it a 7 because the battle scenes were pretty cool. Even though a lot of the film with his wife I didn't really care about, those are pretty cool scenes. I have to admit that. So I saw Napoleon, and that's only because I couldn't see Killers of the Flower Moon in theaters. I was a day or 2 late. So that's the one I got to see. So I saw that one. Did you see that one?
I did not. I hear that. What was that? An Apple product? Was that like an Apple film?
I think it was an Apple film.
Okay. Well, they'll be coming out on whatever device Apple holds theirs at.
Apple Plus or something like
that.
Yeah,
and I did. Which over in the theater that is closest to me, Napoleon only had like a 3-week stretch before it was off. So I know that they were in some theaters. They were actually pulling it off a little bit earlier. So even if I wanted to, by the time week 3 came around, it was no longer available in my theaters. So whether or not I wanted to, which yes, it was on the list, as well as Killer of the Flower Moons, but I did not end up seeing either. So glad that you got to see one at least.
Yeah, I'm glad I went to see it. I was the youngest person in the theater, but it was fun. I'm glad I got to watch it on the big screen. So it was my first time being in a movie theater in a long time, it seemed like, because I just lived so far from the theater that I wasn't able to watch it. So one of my New Year's resolutions when it comes to movies is to go to the movies more. So I'm going to be doing that more and updating you, Donnie, and the channel, the viewers, on what I see. So I saw Napoleon. I did see Godzilla -1, which is incredible. I saw it twice in theaters. I usually don't see a movie more than once in theaters, but I took my brother-in-law into the theater because he hasn't been in the movies in a long time. In fact, he told me the last movie he saw in theaters was The Meg. And I was like, it's been a while. It's been like 5 years. But I took him to that. But I saw it with my fiance first, and it was so much better than I thought. Definitely a 9 out of 10. Godzilla's just a bad guy in this film. He's not trying to defeat a worse enemy. He's just the bad guy. And the film did so well with sound development. It brought you back to the original Godzilla from the 1950s. And it was kind of a nostalgic feel, but at the same time, it had great effects. It looked really cool. And you really got into the characters, really cared about them. So by the end, you were really on pins and needles about what was happening. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it. It's my favorite Godzilla film. The Matthew Broderick film from 1999 is still in my heart because I grew up with it as a kid. But this Godzilla film's definitely up there. So give it a watch. It's a really good film. I'm thinking you haven't seen it yet, right?
No, I have not. But what sets it apart, and this is somebody that doesn't watch a lot of like monster films like Godzilla or even Aliens, but what is this Godzilla? What does this Godzilla have that sets it apart from all the other ones that you like it more?
Um, it. I like that this isn't Americanized. I know that's kind of a funny thing to say because if you watch the last few Godzilla films, I mean, they're based out of Boston or New York City, and I like those films. They're fine, but this one takes you back to like what the old one was. It's in Tokyo. It's in the 1940s. Like it's just after here the H bomb hit over in Hiroshima, and so they're already going through that hell, and then they go through even more when Godzilla comes on, and it takes you back to what Godzilla was supposed to be, and I like that. I like that they kind of brought back the original, and the music's even from the original, and like I said, as much as I like the Matthew Broderick one, that's not really Godzilla in the eyes of maybe people from Japan and whatnot. So this film actually was made in Japan. It had someone that had a director that was from Japan. It had Japan cast and crew. It was in Japanese. It was not in English, so there were subtitles. And I think overall they did a really good job at bringing back nostalgia for it. So that's pretty much, I kind of went on a path there, but that's pretty much why. So just go watch it, Donnie, okay?
Okay. Well, as soon as I catch up on the whole lore and the other films of the Godzilla series, I guess I will. That'll be like having you jump right into the Planet of the Apes films, where I'm going to have to suffer through this coming year. And I do say suffer because that is 100% going to happen. Suffering, pain, and suffering. But yes. So Chase, do you have another film ready to go?
I have two more. One, Wonka. I had to go see Wonka. The lady wanted to see it, so went to watch it. And I actually liked it more than I thought.
That is such a lie. The lady didn't want to go see it. Tell the audience what's real, Chase. We want the truth, and they can handle the truth. Who wanted to see it?
My lady wanted to see it.
False. Anyway, go ahead.
I like the original better, and I always will like the original better.
That wasn't the question, Chase. The question was who wanted to see it. Okay.
I stand my case. No, it actually was pretty decent. I thought it would be worse than it was. It was a prequel, so it's how Wonka started. So we're used to Wonka already having the chocolate factory and everything. So it's kind of cool that they made a film about him starting out with nothing and then getting his chocolate factory. Spoiler alert. But it was a really good film, and I think Timothée Chalamet did a really good job at portraying the role because I'm used to him being in really serious roles like in Dune and whatnot. So to see him in like a singing, happy, very positive role is really cool. It's really nice to see. So, and being in the movie theater, any movie in the movie theater is just better when you watch it on the screen. I think if I watched it just on my regular TV, I might not have liked it as much. But once you got into the film, it was really good. The first 10 minutes, I was like, what is this film going to be? And then it really got good, and it continued to get good. I don't think it got worse. I think it got better. And so it was pretty great. And Pure Imagination, the song is in the new film. So you at least get to hear that nostalgic thing from the original. But Gene Wilder is Willy Wonka in my heart, and he always will be. And then the Johnny Depp film, I'm not big on anyway. But go see Wonka. It's actually pretty decent. I liked it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I'd watch it again. Not a bad film. And I know you haven't seen that yet. But maybe your lady would take you.
See, the great thing about our relationship, okay, and I'm talking about me and my lady, not just ours, even though we have a great relationship, Chase. The relationship between me and my lady, she has no interest in seeing Wonka. And which is great, because I'm just like, cool, I don't need to go. But I'll tell you what, before you say your last one, me and her actually did, late in December, we decided to watch a film called Anything But You, which is the Sydney Sweeney chick flick with Glenn Powell. And let me tell you, Chase, that film had me laughing. There was a lot of cringe moments, but it was a lot of funny cringe moments and a lot of great rom-com humor, which, again, I'm not a big rom-com fan, but I'll tell you what, like, that film had something special there, and it really did. And it wasn't just because I had a lady sitting next to me to enjoy it with. This was a film that if it was on, say, Amazon Prime for free, I think that I would have watched it. But like, you know what? This is pretty funny. And man, is Glenn Powell sexy. Woo! I mean, so is Sydney Sweeney, but that's a different story. Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell my buddy from which he's not my buddy. I shouldn't say that because it makes me sound famous. But my buddy from Top Gun Maverick, by the way, loved him. Still love that film to this day. Top Gun Maverick, check it out.
I noticed.
I know. Shauna got me a canvas poster for Top Gun, so when the new studio happens, that'll be hanging in the background.
Oh, she's a keeper. She is a keeper indeed. I haven't seen anything but you, but it seemed like it was pretty easily. What's the word? I think I could guess what happens at the end. Like my guess, spoiler alert, is they get together. Like it just, it was just like, okay, yeah, that's how it ends, and so I didn't really care to see it.
But see, that's the pleasure. Okay, growing up in a household where my mother watched Hallmark films, that was the ending of every film. Okay, that was the ending of everything. So, I mean, therefore, not saying that you should always have those endings, but yes, Chase, you are absolutely right. It's not a spoiler. They do end up together.
Funny.
Amazing.
To give it a watch.
Amazing how that works. Amazing how that works when it's not real life.
Right. So the last film I saw was a film I didn't plan on seeing, but I just went to see it, and that was The Boys in the Boat. I saw that on New Year's Day. That was the first film I watched this year, actually, and I really liked it. It was really good. I went in. I just thought it looked very inspirational, and I thought, for 2024, the very first day, I can go see a nice inspirational film. Why not? It was either that or The Iron Claw. Like, it was one of those two. And The Boys in the Boat seemed like it was more suitable for that theme I was going for. And it was really good. I was surprised that I enjoyed it more than I thought. It's still an 8 in my head. Like, I would watch it again. I might even buy it if it's on sale. But it's about the Olympic team, the Washington Huskies in 1936, that went to the Olympics and actually won. So it's not a spoiler. You know they're going to win. That's the whole point in this. But sometimes you get into these films that are about real life events, like a team, and you get this cliche thing where you have a team that shouldn't be together. They do really well. They fight and split up, and then they come back together and win. And this didn't have that. This film was not about the individual team members. It had a main character, of course, that you learned a little bit more about his life, where his father abandoned him and his mother died, and he lived in an old Plymouth during the Great Depression, and he went to school, and he needed to pay for his tuition, so he joined this boat team to get paid, and then he just kind of fell in love with it, and you got to go from there, and you see them progress. But the film is merely about the boat racing and them winning. And it's so cool how it's captured. It's directed by George Clooney, which is kind of cool that he directed this film. And the acting was really well done. And I would highly recommend seeing this movie in theaters, because to see the boat racing on the big screen is amazing. It was so cool to see. And I love films from the old age, as you know. So to see the set dressing of like the old cars from the 30s, like the Plymouth he lives in and everything, I just think that's really cool. And so I was very surprised about this film. So Boys in the Boat, go see it. It's a really good film.
So you're not the first one today to talk about The Boys in the Boat. I have a coworker in which said that he was going to see this with his wife as well today. So I was like, okay. That was one in theaters that I saw. I didn't take name recognition of it. At first, when I heard that name earlier this morning, I was like, well, what one's that one? I was like, obviously it has something to do with the boat. But I did forget that trailer. So the trailer kind of is passable. It's not one of those films that's going to stand out as the average moviegoer. Be like, oh, okay, like this is a thing this year. Like a Napoleon or Oppenheimer would be. But I'm glad that you chose a historical route, because personally, those are the best films. And in this day and age, I feel like the historical films really do catch a lot of fire as far as like being able to spread with the lower budgets as well. It's nice that, you see films like this succeeding financially.
Yeah. And like those films that don't get that much attention, sometimes those are the best films. Sometimes those are better than the ones that do get attention. So I would give this one a watch for sure, especially if you're a history buff. And Hitler's in it, surprisingly. And everyone cheers for him. And he's not a bad guy yet in this film, which I sat and laughed in the theater, because when Hitler came on, all the audience, the German audience in Berlin, were cheering for him. And I was like, yeah, how about you wait about 5 to 10 years, you're not going to be cheering. That's going to change.
Some of them still were. Some of them still were. I mean, it's historical. But no, I'm glad that you actually brought that movie up, because that's a movie that I don't think it's going to be on too many people's list in 2023. As far as like, you know, like, is it going to be on their best or worst? I feel like that's a film that's going to get lost somewhere in the middle. So I appreciate that you brought that up. Looking in the 2024 Chase, the first film that I'm going to see this year in theaters, not the first film I saw, because honestly, it's January 4th today at the time of the recording. And the first film, I finally had a chance to sit down today and I watched something right before I fell asleep a little bit to take a nap, but it's still considered the first film watch, was actually Hobbs and Shaw, because it's available for free on Amazon Prime. Not the one I wanted to watch to start the year, but you know what? It's the first one I sat down and was like, okay, this seems fascinating. So I turned it on and fell asleep to it. But that has nothing to do with the quality of the film. That's just because I was super tired. So it's a technical first. But the first film I'm going to see in theaters, Chase, is actually Night Swim, coming up tomorrow. So tomorrow. I go to the theaters tomorrow to see Night Swim. So Night Swim, for the audience that doesn't know, or maybe you do know, is a horror film in which I'm going to call it the Marco Polo horror film, because the whole opening trailer is just this girl playing Marco Polo. The guy leaves the pool, and there's this thing that's in the pool. We don't even know what, if she escapes, we don't know what it is. And the thing I like about Blumhouse and the A24 and all the stuff like that, those type of films, and these low budget films, but you know, still big company names behind them, is you don't know what they're going to play around with, because the trailers are very vague, like trailers should be, by the way. So I'm interested to see what this monster, what this imaginatory thing is that creeps me out on film. It makes me say ah and scream and look over at my girlfriend and be like, did you jump? And she'll be like, no. So I'll be the one jumping, most likely. But you know what? It'll be worth it.
I would too. So
that is the first one I'm going to see in theaters coming up this year. Chase, do you have one? Well, you said you went on the first to go see a film.
I did see that on the first, but I have films that are coming out in 2024 that I'm real excited for. One of them is actually called, what is it called? Argyle. Argyle looks hilarious. So it kind of follows the Lost City movie type vibe, where someone wrote a book and what happened in the book happened in real life, and now the people that did the heist in real life are trying to get after this woman because they think she knows something and whatnot. And it's a whole mixture, but it's from the guy who made the Kingsman. So I think that the trailer is amazing. It's one of those trailers that are just so good. You can watch it over and over again. The music in it, it's just really well put together. And I love the trailer. So Argyle, it comes out February 2nd. So that is one of the films that I'm excited to see.
And Chase, I would imagine that another film on that list is the next Dune in the series.
That was my next one.
There you go. So Chase, you want to take that away? What does Dune mean to you, and why are you excited about it? Because as somebody that has not seen the first one, that will be watching a double basically movie marathon before the second one comes out. Of course, I haven't seen it, so I can't really speak upon it. But Dune is one of those exciting names, if not maybe the most anticipated film coming out, because as we're reviewing the list so far early, there's not a lot of films building up hype per se, as far as like that you expect a big monster return from.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dune is amazing. The trailer that came out recently about it looked really good. They did a really good job on this last trailer. Since you haven't seen the first one, it's kind of cool that you get to do a double feature. So my recommendation when you watch this film is watch it during the day and then go to a night viewing of the second one. Literally watch it and then go to the movies and watch the second part, which is what I'm going to try to do when this comes out, which it comes out in March, I think. March 1st or something like that. Yeah, March 1st. But this is the king of sci-fi right now, the director, Denis Villeneuve. Oh, gosh. I'm sorry, people.
Villeneuve.
I don't know how to say.
Is it Villeneuve? I have to look at that up.
Yeah, Denis. He's the king of sci-fi right now. He's doing really well. He did Arrival. He did, obviously, Dune. Now he's doing Dune Part 2. And The cinematography for this film and the sound effects is just amazing for Dune. They did an incredible job with it. And the first Dune Part 1 was really good. So I'm curious to see what they do with this one. It's almost 3 hours. I think it's 2 hours, 46 minutes is what IMDb is telling me. So yeah, it's going to be a long day for you if you watch the first one and then the second one, but it's worth it. But mainly the cinematography and all that. And it's a slow burn. I don't know if you've ever watched Blade Runner or Blade Runner 2049. Have you ever watched those films?
Bits and pieces, but not the entire film.
Well, if it's going to be action packed, but not as much as you may think. It's slow burn, but it's beautiful. I think Dune has more action than Blade Runner. But if you watch Blade Runner 2049, it is a slow burn. It's not a film you'd watch just for fun unless you like those type of films like me. But
well, it's also the color grading too, because like I get where you're saying. I don't know the plot of Blade Runner per se, but I do know the color grading, in which I'm like, okay, Dune has that little bit of color grading, not the overt orange, but I would say also a good comparison is Mad Max Fury Roads by how it looks, because Mad Max there's a lot of vibe, especially when it comes to like the desert look and tone.
Yeah, and films either go orange and blue. That's kind of the two that they go for. So this one definitely goes on the orange side of it. But no, I'm real excited for Dune. In fact, I was excited for it when it was supposed to come out in November, but that did not happen. So, but no, March 1st, Dune Part 2 comes out, and they have an episode just on that.
And another film that comes out, since you talked about your brother-in-law, correct, going to the theater for the first time since The Meg. And of course, I was going to ask about, is it The Meg 2 or The Meg 1? Like all the way back then, I was like, oh my goodness, it was The Meg 1. But we have another Jason Statham film coming out, which is The Beekeeper, which to me looks fascinating. I'm a big Statham fan. At least I'm becoming a Statham fan. So I'm interested to see if it's a little bit more cringe like The Meg 2 was, which didn't have a lot of good reviews. But you know what? There was some enjoyable moments behind it. But this seems like he's getting back to his roots of like the Hobbs and Shaw that I just talked about prior. So it's more action. It's going to be more beat 'em up type, throw 'em down film. And those are the type of films I gravitate towards a little bit, that I could just turn my mind off and just go watch and be like, hey, let's see if it's a good time or not.
My fiance wants to see that movie really bad. I don't mind seeing it, but that one explosion in the trailer when he goes to the offices is so fake. And then the one at the gas station is so realistic. And I'm like, why didn't they just make it realistic for the other one? Like, it looks fake. It looks like, and I hate that. Drives me nuts. I'm like, oh my Lord, couldn't you have just, I don't know, get a shot of him? Oh, I can sit here and complain about it, but it just looked really fake, and that bothered me. So every time I see that trailer, I just think of that, like,
But gone are the days of, I think, and this, we've talked about CGI on the channel before. We've talked about other films and like, is the CGI getting bad? Is it because like these higher budget, like they're not putting as emphasis on it? I think there's another combination of, we're almost getting too good and too realistic that it looks so unrealistic. That might be the point in which we're going to, and I don't know. But gone are the days of Heath Ledger's Joker during The Dark Knight blowing up the hospital behind him and being like, oh, that looks real.
That's because they blew up a building.
Yes,
they
exactly
blew up a building.
But gone are those days. They're not coming back. I would hope that actually our generation, like between you and me, I believe that if we ever build up our companies, I think that we are the type of people that would actually do things that are more practical. So we would be building the sound stages. We would, yes, absolutely. I would too.
Give me a torch. I'll do it right now. Like,
by the way, did you see the behind the scenes of how they made the particle effects for Oppenheimer and stuff like that? So cool. So cool. I loved everything about that. So I did. Oppenheimer, you're going to find out, is going to be somewhere on my list at the end of the episode about 2023 favorites and awards. So
the way you love Nolan films is the way I love old films. It's just funny to watch.
If Nolan directed Gone with the Wind, you'd love it too. Although that would be an interesting take from Nolan, because I feel like he would have to blow something up.
I don't know if Nolan could do Gone with the Wind.
And also, honestly, where would Matt Damon be in Gone with the Wind? Because Nolan brings in his crew of certain people. So you'd either have Bale, or you'd have Matt Damon, or you have Cillian Murphy showing up. So who's playing what in Gone with the Wind?
Well, Robert Downey Jr. is going to be Rhett Butler. I know you don't know who that is, but yeah, he's going to be that for sure. Cillian Murphy, I don't know. I don't want to say Ashley because Ashley is kind of a baby in that film, and I don't want to put Cillian Murphy in that. So I'll give that to Matt Damon for sure. But that's a tough one. But yeah, it's just fun to see how much you like him because I have a lot of friends that love Nolan, and I like Nolan, but there are moments in his films I'm like, okay, I don't care. Like I just it's the same with every director. Like it's Tarantino. I like Tarantino, but then I don't like him. Like it's like hit and miss sometimes. And like the Dark Knight movies were great, but then I got into Inception and Tenet and those films, and I'm like, okay, my mind hurts. I don't. It looks great, but I don't need my mind hurt. But then he does his history films, which I do like his history films, because I think that's what you really like in Nolan. So I'm with you on that.
Yes, Nolan is the Spielberg as far as like the next Spielberg for historical films. I can't tell you Inception. A lot of people praise Inception. Inception was not on my list of like top Nolan films. Of course, you could talk about The Dark Knight and stuff like that, what he's done with the Batman trilogy. But honestly, it's Dunkirk, Oppenheimer. Those are the films I find gravitated towards when it comes to Nolan, because I do like the Spielberg-esque films. But I will say this about directors, because this is how I want people to perceive me being a director. And I assume you want them to perceive you the same way, but correct me if I'm wrong. So my thing is, as a director and writer and a creator, you realize that you want to devil in different categories. Like you never want to be stuck or like typecasted as a director and only doing one thing, which is something we're doing with Vigilante Pictures, kind of branching out from Shield of Hope, being able to do a little bit more edgier stuff and still work on my craft as a filmmaker and stuff like that, and like dive into these different genres. I think the best kind of directors, you're never going to find a director in which, and even coming from the school of George Lucas, and I love George Lucas and I love Spielberg, Indiana Jones, sometimes with what Spielberg did, sometimes like the newer Jaws and stuff like that, Jurassic Parks. And then you have George Lucas with the Red Tail movie. You have his decision making in the prequels, even though I believe they're better than Disney stuff currently. But if you can like a director, you're never going to like him 100% of the time. But if you find yourself enjoying his films more than you hate his films, I think that's actually a sign of a really good director. Because most directors want to branch out.
Yeah, but then also directors have their own style, like Tarantino, which I like Tarantino for the most part. There's a couple films I do not like of his, and I don't think they're great, and they're being praised as if they're really great, and that's a whole episode that I can complain about. But actually, one director that I haven't disliked any of his films, and I really like him, is Terrence Malick. If you've ever heard of him, he did a movie called The Thin Red Line, which is a Vietnam movie, and then he's done a lot of films. He's a Christian director, which is really great, but he's done some incredible films, and no one, like, that's not a name you really know, but he's making movies, and they're really good. They're slower, so they're not going to be action-packed Oppenheimer type films, but they are just really good. They're really well done, and every time I watch his films, I just enjoy them. They're fun. So check out Terrence Malick, you and viewers.
What was fun is you said action-packed and slower in the same sentence. I was like, believe it or not, I don't think anybody walked out of Oppenheimer thinking like, oh, this was quick-paced. I really don't believe that, because I'm just over here like, that felt just like Avatar 2. I was like, I enjoyed both of those films, but I'll sit there and I will admit, I was like, you felt all of that 2+ hours. You really did. Like that was...
Yeah, Oppenheimer was, at some point I was like, okay, let's get this bomb lit. Like, I get it. Cool. But it's history. You're going to have history. So...
And cool name drops too in Oppenheimer. Things that even as a history buff, where at least I guess I shouldn't call myself a history buff, but somebody that likes reading about World War II history, things about after the trial of Oppenheimer, you found out like, you had a JFK name drop that happened later in the film. It was just really cool to see how pieces connected about and who was all involved in the project. And really, I don't think a lot of people knew this, and I did going into the film, but it was weird to see on screen for Oppenheimer, because you think Oppenheimer and Einstein, you think like, oh, Einstein was so long ago. Like, just when you think about history, you're like, oh, Einstein exists like hundreds of years ago or something like that. That's how the human brain perceives it. But it's crazy that they had conversations because they were that close in time. Like, it feels like since we were born in the 90s, it feels like that time before World War II and Einstein's life. Like, it seems like it was so long ago, but it really wasn't.
I was gonna look up. Yeah, you know, my mother was alive when Einstein was alive. That's interesting. So, the last thing that I'm actually excited for the theaters is the Phantom series, and they bring out like musicals onto the big screen, but they also bring out older films. And they're putting Wizard of Oz in the theater this month. They're putting My Fair Lady in the theater, and they're putting my favorite film of all time, Gone with the Wind, in the theaters as well for the 85th anniversary. So Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, that's 85th anniversary, and for My Fair Lady, I think it's the 60th anniversary. But still, those three films are going to be in theaters. So if you're a fan of any of those, like I am, absolutely, I'm going to go see all of them. And I recommend you, Donnie, at least see them, two of them at least. I'll give you two. You can watch two of them. My Fair Lady's not that long. It's a good movie, but I've always wanted to see Gone with the Wind in theaters. It's my all-time favorite, as everyone knows. And it is a dream. It's literally a dream to go see that movie in theaters. And I can tell you, I'm going to go to that movie and come out in tears. And it's not sad tears. It is happy tears. I'm going to be so excited to actually finally see my favorite in theaters. So that comes out in April. I think so. It's different for every theater with those. Like, it comes and goes. But I think that I know Wizard of Oz is this month. I don't know when My Fair Lady is going to be in theaters. I don't know that. But Gone with the Wind is in April, so I am planning an evening to watch that film. And it has intermission, and you can actually use intermission correctly like it was supposed to be and go get more popcorn. So those are the movies I'm most excited for 2024. It's funny that the movies I'm most excited for I've already seen, but to see it on the big screen is a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different thing. So I'm ecstatic for those films.
And you should be ecstatic because one day you too might be able to direct the next Gone with the Wind, because apparently from what I hear is just like Steamboat Mickey, of course Disney lost the public domain lawsuit, so now Steamboat Willie is public domain. Also, I hear that Gone with the Wind and stuff like that has a shelf life that is quickly approaching the public domain atmosphere, just like Peter Pan, which is crazy to think about, isn't it? Like all these things are that the copyrights are running out and stuff like that, where they're going to be free to use to the public to do what they want to do with.
I don't know. I think Gone with the Wind has like over 10 years left because it came out like 12 to 15 years after Steamboat Willie. So I think it's safe right now. But honestly, if I was a big director and they gave me a script to say I could remake Gone with the Wind, I would tell them no.
Yeah.
Because you should not remake that movie. You need to leave it alone, leave movies alone, and make up new ideas.
But Chase, we all know what's coming. I mean, they literally, and I didn't realize this, but Winnie the Pooh hit public domain 3 years ago. And immediately after it hit public domain, this one company that if you saw the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, they jumped right on that horror film stuff. Like, it is amazing how quickly they had something planned out. Like, so there are people and companies, of course, that are watching these public domains and just waiting back and be like, this one drops here, this one drops here, this one drops here. And they're planning the future. Chase, I'm not saying that we should be doing that, but I wish there was a tracker of some sort that I found earlier that I was like, okay, if I wait till the year like 2050, this will be in the public domain. But now it's something that's being brought in the conversation where I think sometimes as independent filmmakers, we never really thought to do. I mean, I think it would be cool to do a Peter Pan film. Peter Pan was one of my favorite films growing up. And I always thought about different adaptations I would do to try to build on the J.M. Barrie's legacy. And I wouldn't do so much of Peter Pan and Wendy. I would do more Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens. There was a whole book series dedicated to that. So I would play around with that as well. I mean, things have also been played around with. I don't know. Like, of course, you can go with Robert Williams' Hook. You could go with Finding Neverland, which had starred Johnny Depp. You could go along with even, what was it? There was a mini-series, I think, on the Sci-Fi Channel called Neverland a few years ago that was actually putting Hook in the anti-heroes, then he turned into villain. So it was kind of the rise and fall of Hook, which, honestly, I can see myself doing something like that too. So as independent filmmakers out there, we should kind of be looking at this just to make something that, like, we cherished and actually respect. Because in a day and age in which Marvel, and I know I don't want to go down the rabbit hole talking about Marvel and Star Wars, but in a day and age in which we feel like characters are being mistreated to the way that like George Lucas wouldn't want, in ways of Stan Lee wouldn't want, I feel like the best kind of creators moving forward is if the public domain hit and we can start making stuff. In which I also hear that Superman's coming up here within next year. So that's crazy that Superman's about to hit public domain. There is going to be so many fan films. So many.
Yep. At Comic-Con last year, I got to see the original model for Tinkerbell from the Peter Pan film.
That's cool.
That was really cool. She's older though, for sure, but she was there. It was really cool to see her. So, I from the old film. So I was like, that's pretty cool. So yeah.
So Chase, this next segment is brought to you in part by Shield Hope Productions because you are on this channel. So there we go. It's an official sponsor of it, and it is going to be Donnie's 2023 Awards. Audience, this is going to go to films strictly made in 2023 that debuted in 2023 that I saw. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, there were some Marvel films I didn't want to watch, so technically they will not go in the worst category. Just because I hear rumors on the internet of what is bad and what is good does not mean that they are going to make the list, because if I have not watched it, it's not really getting a fair view then. So, and I think that you need to do things based off best and worst, even though we could talk trash on it all day, but the best and worst belongs to things that I have seen or haven't seen. So, without further ado, first on my list for awards is my most surprising film. And I actually had a tie here because I couldn't decide which one, Chase. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves and A Haunting in Venice, most surprising films.
Okay.
Chase, I'm not a big Dungeons and Dragons fan, but I am part of the gaming community when it comes to lore and like playing board games. Like me and my buddies will get together and we'll play Mansions of Madness. So like we're physically rolling dice, doing different scenarios, trying to beat the game itself as they're throwing creatures and hauntings at us. So it was really cool because if you just play video games, you can kind of see little Easter eggs throughout Dungeons and Dragons that just take a nod to typical gameplay. And then A Haunting in Venice, I didn't know what to expect. Again, this was coming off a series where you had Murder on the Oriental Express, you had Death on the Nile, and then you had A Haunting in Venice. I didn't like really the first two. I would say out of that series, Murder on the Oriental Express was the better one. But this one, to wrap it all off with Kenneth Branagh, and I know that they're going to make other films, but I really thought that this was cool how they mixed supernatural with a little bit of thriller and horror, but still mystery. So I was really fascinated by that.
I haven't seen that one. I love Kenneth Branagh. Like, he's one of my favorites. So I really love his work in the Shakespeare realm of film. So I've been meaning to watch it, just haven't gotten around to it. But I'm glad I'm glad it sounds like it's really good.
No, it is, and I do recommend it to people. Like I said, it is on my most surprising films. So there was a split there, which I do not believe this happens again on my list, so that is the only one where there is a tie. So give them both first place nods. All right, the biggest disappointment, Expendables 4.
I knew
it was so bad. Like it is crazy about how you could go into a Stallone action hero, genre and expect to see Stallone, but you don't even. Like it's sad. He's in it for like, what was it? Where we were talking about the Meg 2, how there's a dinosaur on the opening credit, and he's there for like 5 minutes before he gets destroyed and eaten. And it's over here like that's how it felt Stallone was in for. So Statham had to carry the cast. Bad writing, bad CGI, complete disappointment. So that's where that's going. It's the most disappointment. Films I laughed the most in. Now this is going to be interesting, Chase. You would think it would be Anyone But You, the comedy, and which was up for nomination here since it was even later in the year. And when I say things that I'd laugh about, typically it's films that you've seen later before you make this list, because you remember the funnier things closer to when you're making the list, rather than like, oh, I laughed at this during Super Mario movie back in April. The mind just doesn't think like that. When you think funny, you think more current. So what's interesting about this one was I gave the one I laughed the most to, and my girlfriend can contest, Thanksgiving, the horror slasher. It was I laughed so hard during that film. So it was a mixture of horror with jump scares, but it had so much comedy in it. Really did. And even the times where somebody was getting gruesomely like There's one moment in which, and the film opens up, Chase, and I don't know if you plan on seeing it, so I'm going to apologize. It's not a spoiler per se, but the opening of the movie starts off with a Black Friday-esque shopping right before Thanksgiving, and there's a melee in this. It should really be Walmart, but whatever, they changed the name to it. But there's a melee in their version of Walmart in this small town, and somebody's hair gets caught in a shopping cart wheel, and it rips their scalp off. Like it is, it is like I'm looking at this like, oh my gosh, and my mouth is just dropped. I'm laughing, like I'm laughing because I'm just like, it's like, oh, this looks sick, but I was like, oh gosh, so I laughed super hard on that one. But yes, Anyone But You would be second on the list, but the horror film got me out of all the laughs. Wasted Potential. So this one, and I'm not a big fan of Adam Driver, but the movie 65, there were moments in it that I liked with the dinosaurs. And honestly, yes, the first 3-4 dinosaurs we saw on screen were bad CGI. They weren't Jurassic Park level. But what they did with the T-Rex at the end with the CGI, I would say was better than Jurassic Park. So they spent like all the budget for that. But Adam Driver, I mean, there's not a lot of character development in this film. It's, as you would expect, it's a race against time to get off a planet 65 million years ago. So it has an After-Earth type vibe with Will Smith and his son. I would argue it's the same plot, except for these two people in this film are not related. But it just seems like you could do a little bit more. So that got my Wasted Potential.
I agree. 65, I did like it, but I wouldn't really watch it again. I don't care to. I like Adam Driver, though, but yeah.
So, best actor on screen, Robert Downey Jr., hands down. I do believe that he should be nominated, and I do think, in my opinion, he will win for best actor. I didn't see too many people this year, and again, I'm not typically somebody that sits down and is going to watch the typical like The Whale per se that won last year in certain categories. I'm not somebody that's going to sit down and watch those cinematic films that like are typical, like, okay, yeah, this is going to be nominated because it has this type of plot or this type of like feel. I don't really watch that. But Oppenheimer, what Robert Downey Jr. was able to do, and again, when we talk about Oppenheimer, we think about Cillian Murphy because he's playing Oppenheimer. But really, it was the Robert Downey Jr. show with Cillian Murphy.
Yeah. No, he did a good job. He really did a good job. Good performances throughout that movie. But Emily Blunt did a really good job, too. Oh, like her character in that film, she killed that role for sure.
And she might be nominated, too, which, first of all, I can see a potential where Robert Downey Jr., Cillian Murphy, and Emily Blunt are nominated.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's crazy. I mean, even Matt Damon could be nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but at the same time, I don't know. I mean, would you consider Robert Downey Jr. a supporting actor to Cillian, or would you consider them both main? Because it really, and this is something that the Avengers had to deal with the whole time. Wherever Chris Evans was, wherever, well, let's just put all the Chris's because there were 3 Chris's: Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, Chris cubed. So wherever they were during the interview process, whenever Downey Jr. would walk in, there's just something about him, the aurora. He would like take control of the spotlight and shine on himself. Like he has that kind of personality. So, like I said, he's probably going to get nominated for maybe Best Supporting Actor and win it, but he could easily win Best Main Actor.
I think he's nominated for Best Supporting. That's what I think.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't checked I should have checked before this episode of what actually is nominated or not.
I'm checking right now. Yep. He's nominated as well as Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon, Ryan Gosling for Barbie, Charles Melton for May December, and Mark Ruffalo as Poor Things.
Could you imagine? Because I would imagine if De Niro's for Killers of the Flower Moon, I would imagine that also means DiCaprio is going to be main actor with Cillian Murphy, right? If it was that good of a film, is he going to get the main actor nod?
He didn't get the main actor nomination.
You know, it's funny. DiCaprio always wins for films he probably shouldn't win for. It's like when we joke about his Oscars and stuff like that. It's like he's been in other films, but like The Revenant got it for him. Which I'm not saying that was a bad film. I'm just saying it's like it's amazing that like he didn't win for Titanic and like all this other stuff like that, and he wins for like these other ones.
Definitely, like it's the same with Humphrey Bogart. He won the film he won an Oscar for. It's like, really, that was the film? Like he did so good in all these other films. And yeah, I always say that DiCaprio's the Bogart of the 21st century. It's the truth, because he's so good, but he just
Yeah.
doesn't get acknowledged for it. It seems like.
I have a category
So
on here, Chase, called the dumbest film, and that went to Strays. Strays was the absolute dumbest film I saw this year. The dumbest. It really was. I mean, the Will Ferrell combination is just stupid. Stupid. That's all I can say about that one. Most anticipated, The Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbird and Snakes. I think anybody that knows me knows that I'm into the Hunger Games, even though I didn't read the books, but I've been into the Hunger Games movies, and I was anticipating this one. Worst film. Here we go into the big ones at the end. Worst film. I'm going to double up on this list. Expendables 4. Worst film I saw. Dumbest was Strays. Most disappointing was Expendables. This one's Expendables. Worst film. Hands down. It was disappointing on all levels, and it was the worst. Best director. I gave it to Nolan. I think out of all the other films I saw, I thought Nolan did a great job with that piece. And I think he will win Director of the Year, but who knows? We'll see. Best film then goes to Oppenheimer. The feel-good flick of the year, by the way, Gran Turismo, the race car simulator driver that gets taken out of his environment of playing video games to being trained to be a driver in the, I believe it was the F Series. I don't know my race cars that well. But honestly, that was something where you sat down and you could go and be entertained in the theater, and it has a feel-good story. And something that like you could see being like that kind of New Year's Day feel. You know, you're rejuvenating the year. It's a nice family flick. There's not really any swearing in it. And it's something where it's just like, it's a feel-good story at the end. So even though it was middle of the summer, could have easily been beginning of the year for that feel-good vibe. So I gave that the feel-good flick award. And now to my favorite film, because believe it or not, even though Oppenheimer is the best film of the year, in my opinion, my personal favorite film, and I was going back and forth about this, Chase, because honestly, and this is something that I had to explain to my girlfriend, because I was like, listen, I'd be lying to myself if the three of my favorite films this year were The Hunger Games, Oppenheimer, and this next film. And I thought to myself, I sat down there, I was like, okay, my personal favorite. I've watched so much Markiplier lately. I've bought books lately about all this. My favorite film that I saw in theaters this year, personal favorite, not saying it's best directed, not saying it has the best storyline, because it doesn't. Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's just captivated my heart. Captivated. Five Nights at Freddy's captivated my heart. It made me want to dive into the lore of the franchise, which again, watching Markiplier, watching Game Theory, and just even, I don't know, I have all these different books. I have the Five Nights at Freddy's, The Silver Eye sitting right in front of me that I need to read. So to make me dive into a fan base, and I haven't dove into like a fandom this hard since Avatar in 2009, Star Wars in 2005. And I really can't tell you, obviously, before that, I didn't really, because I wasn't really old enough to even think about that. So those are three franchises in which I basically dove hard into the lore after seeing a film. So, Chase, I had to be honest with myself there and give that as my favorite film of the year. I have two honorable mentions, by the way, because these should be mentioned. And we could easily go on and talk about honorable mentions and a whole list of films that I did see this year, but two that need to be mentioned. Number two, but number one on what I'm about to say. Cocaine Bear. I really did enjoy Cocaine Bear. I know a lot of people thought it was stupid. I enjoyed it. But I can't go a year without mentioning one of the highest grossing films of the year, which really had no business of being a high grossing film when it was announced. But the fact that it captivated America, it captivated the world, it was brought to you by Angel Studios and just continued to go off. Sound of Freedom was a honorable mention for this year, and I want to leave it as that because Sound of Freedom could easily fit in any of these categories that I named that were in the good or most surprising, or films, or even like you could say best actor. I thought Caviezel did a really good job, which we know that that's not going to be nominated for an award. We just know how Hollywood is, and we know what Hollywood does. So clearly that's not going to be nominated. But it's probably some people's best film. It could be some people's feel-good flick, even though it has a darker tone to it. But I think a version of feel-good can also be, hey, I left this theater feeling different. I'm wanting a change or like wanting action to be done, like a little bit of activism. So I thought that had to be an honorable mention. And Chase, that is Donnie Shields Awards for 2023.
I think my favorite good feel film would probably be Boys in the Boat. That made me feel good. You leave the theater feeling pretty good. My favorite film that I've watched last year was actually The Creator. That was a good film. That was an amazing film. I enjoyed that one the most. I went with my mother and my fiance, so we had a really good time. But also Godzilla, I can't help. Never seen a Godzilla movie that made people cry before, so that was interesting. But that would probably be my favorite film for sure. Best Picture for sure. But this year I'm going to watch more movies in theaters, and I actually have a New Year's resolution that I would like to share with you, Donnie, and viewers, and that is to build up my movie collection more. So I know I did my Black Friday shopping, which I'm still paying for that, but I'm going to be building on my collection more, not just DVDs or Blu-ray, but VHS too. And so I'm just going to slowly build it up, and every time I do build it up, when we have an episode, I will update you on what I get, just to keep you guys informed of what I have. My collection is, I don't know if you can see it that well, but it's 3 shelves right now, and hopefully it's a whole shelf by the end of the year. Hopefully. But yeah, I'm also going to be doing VHS too, because I really love VHS tapes. They're really cool. I like the nostalgic feel. So I am excited for it.
And not to mention, he also has another New Year's resolution, which is to finish a film in which we start production on later this year. Which it's really early in the year, but later this year. So, Chase, thank you for joining me for an episode of Movie Mayhem. To ring in the new year, where can people find you at? Maybe they're looking for a different channel to watch. Maybe they're listening to more podcasts, or maybe even some short films. Where can people find you at on social media and beyond?
So you can follow my personal page at Chase Morgan Hewitt on Instagram, but I also run True Light Pictures. I am the founder and owner of it. And you, Donnie, obviously has helped me with True Light as well on some stuff and stuff to come. On YouTube, you can follow True Light Pictures. We have one short film, and more content's going to be out on there. I'm also diving in on TikTok as well at True Light Pictures, so go check that out. But Donnie and I also do a podcast called The Golden Review, where we review old films from the Golden Age of Hollywood. And that is on Spotify at The Golden Review and on Instagram at The Golden Review. And we're also trying to get a YouTube channel for The Golden Review so that we can just post the episodes on YouTube. But what we're also going to do on YouTube is post old film scenes that you cannot find on YouTube. Because some of those old films do get forgotten, and it's really hard to find certain scenes. So I want to be able to help bring those back and show them on YouTube so people can enjoy the Golden Age. So, yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for watching this episode, and continue to watch our other archive of episodes, especially on the brand new shieldofhopefilms.com, just released within the past day or two, so go check it out. Go sign up for our newsletter, go hit all the little links. It takes you to Spotify, it takes you to Instagram, it takes you all over the place. What was your best films of 2023? Let us know. I'm Donnie Shields. Chase Morgan Hewlett is alongside of me. We'll be back for more episodes on Movie Mayhem coming up this year.